HDMI forum rejects AMD's HDMI 2.1 open source driver proposal, no 4K at 120Hz or 5K at 240Hz on Linux. AMD recently tried to add support for key HDMI 2.1 features like 4K at 120Hz and 5K at 240Hz to their open source Linux graphics driver called AMD. They invested engineering resources over several months to prototype the necessary code internally before publishing. The goal was to showcase HDMI 2.1 capabilities and get the implementation approved by the HDMI forum. Unfortunately, the forum ultimately rejected AMD's request, blocking Linux users of new AMD Radeon GPUs from utilizing those cutting-edge display features over HDMI. In comments, AMD stated, "The HDMI forum has rejected our proposal unfortunately. At this time an open source HDMI 2.1 implementation is not possible without violating HDMI forum requirements. This outcome comes as a major disappointment given the time and effort AMD expended aiming to satisfy the forum's guidelines. The months of work now feel wasted with this outright rejection." As reasoning, the HDMI forum cited legal and compliance rules around not enabling open source HDMI 2.1 code. Legal issues and compliance are major problems for open source HDMI developers, as HDMI forum has decided to make the HDMI specification private in 2021. This directly translates into the newest open source driver developments, where the latest features will probably remain behind a closed source binary. Consequently, AMD is advising Linux gamers to use DisplayPort if they want access to features like 4K 120Hz gaming. Meanwhile, Windows AMD users still get full HDMI 2.1 capabilities. This dichotomy spotlights the ongoing obstacles around open source driver development. The rejection also strains the AMD HDMI forum relationship. AMD hoped spearheading open source HDMI 2.1 drivers would position them as leaders in the open source community. Instead, their flexibility plea was denied by the rigid HDMI forum requirements. Ultimately, whether Linux-based AMD owners can ever utilize next-gen HDMI 2.1 displays fully remains to be determined. For now, AMD continues pushing open source as the best approach, while HDMI forum refuses to budge on compliance demands. Both sides seem firmly entrenched, leaving consumers caught in the middle.